Hi, my name is Emily and I'm 23 years old. I still remember the morning of my graduation like it happened yesterday. I woke up earlier than usual, my heart racing with both excitement and a quiet unease I couldn't shake off. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe to the channel, like it, spread the word, and tell us where you're watching from. For years I had dreamed of that moment walking across the stage in my black gown, holding a degree that was more than just paper. To me, it was proof that I had survived all the late nights, the tears, the doubts, and the constant pressure of being the hope of my family. When I looked at myself in the mirror, I barely recognized the girl staring back. My hair was neatly pinned, my eyes a little swollen from lack of sleep, but there was a shine in them, a stubborn fire. I thought, this is it. This is the day everything changes. And yet, a whisper inside me said change would not come as easily as I imagined. As I stood in the long line of graduates, listening to the endless speeches, my mind drifted. I thought about how education had always been my safe place. Books never judged me, teachers pushed me, and exams, though cruel at times, at least gave me results that reflected my effort. Growing up, I had felt powerless in many ways, but studying gave me a sense of control. If I worked hard enough, I could escape the cycle I saw around me. Family dramas, financial dependence, and the endless debts of gratitude that seemed to pass from one generation to the next. When my name was finally called, my legs trembled as I walked to the stage. The applause sounded distant, almost unreal. I smiled, shook the dean's hand, and felt the degree folder pressed into my palm. For a brief second, I wanted to cry, not because of joy alone, but because of everything it had taken to reach that point. Later, as I stood outside surrounded by families taking pictures, I noticed how some parents looked at their children with pure pride. My own parents were proud too, but there was something heavier in their eyes. Relief, maybe. A quiet gratitude that I had not let them down. They hugged me, and my mother whispered, "We knew you could do it." My father said nothing, just patted my back, the way he always did when words failed him. But behind their pride was another presence, my uncle. He had arrived with a wide smile, congratulating me louder than anyone else. I could feel his eyes lingering on me as though the degree belonged partly to him. "All those years, Emily," he said, clapping my shoulder, "and here you are. Don't forget who stood behind you when times were tough." I forced a smile, nodding politely. I couldn't deny that he had helped, at least financially. There had been semesters when I thought I would have to drop out, but then he had stepped in. Everyone said I was lucky to have such a supportive uncle. And maybe I was. But I also knew his help always came with strings, even if invisible. He liked reminding people of his generosity, making sure no one forgot. Still, I tried not to let his words sink too deeply that day. I wanted to savor the victory, even if my joy carried a shadow. That night, when I lay in bed, gown folded neatly in the corner, I stared at the ceiling, thinking about the future. For the first time, I could imagine myself earning my own salary, making choices without asking permission, and maybe even living somewhere far from the suffocating grip of family expectations. I wanted freedom desperately, but in the back of my mind, my uncle's voice lingered. His congratulations had not sounded like simple pride. They sounded like a reminder, like a door he had unlocked but now intended to keep me walking through on his terms. I whispered to myself, "Now, Emily, this degree is yours. You earned it." My chest tightened as though the universe itself was laughing at my stubbornness. Over the next few days, relatives called, sending congratulations. Friends texted, sharing excitement about job applications. Everyone seemed to see graduation as a beginning, not an ending. And yet, I felt suspended in between. A strange silence stretched inside me as though my life was about to shift, but I didn't know how or when. One evening, as I sat in the living room flipping through job listings, my mother peeked in. "Emily, your uncle was asking about you," she said softly. I looked up, frowning. "Asking what?" She hesitated, then replied, "He just said he'd like to talk to you soon. He's proud of you." I smiled faintly, but something in her tone made me uneasy. I didn't ask further, pretending to be busy with my laptop. Inside, however, I felt a knot forming in my stomach. I wanted to believe my graduation meant freedom, but a part of me knew my uncle had his own plans. That night, I couldn't sleep. The excitement of my degree had started to dull, replaced by a subtle fear I couldn't fully name. My mind kept replaying his words, "Don't forget who stood behind you when times were tough." I pulled the blanket tighter. telling myself I was imagining things. Yet deep down, I knew the story of my degree wasn't ending here. It was only the beginning of a different kind of test, one I couldn't prepare for with books or exams, and the first sign of it was already on its way. After graduation week passed, life slowed down again. I tried to cling to the excitement of that day, but reality crept in quietly. My uncle's presence, like a shadow, refused to leave me. His words, "Don't forget who stood behind you," echoed again and again. It wasn't the first time he had said something like that. In fact, it had become his favorite way of speaking about me, as if my very existence was stamped with his signature. My parents had never had enough to cover all of my fees. They did what they could, cutting corners, sacrificing small comforts, and still there were times when the money just wasn't there. That's when my uncle stepped in, swooping down like a savior. Everyone praised him for it. At first, I was grateful. I was 18, terrified of losing my chance at university. I remember my mother crying, saying, "We'll figure it out somehow." And then he had appeared, almost dramatically, offering to pay the remaining amount. "It's nothing," he had said back then, smiling wide in front of everyone. "What's family for?" But it wasn't nothing. At least, not to him. From that day on, it became part of my identity. At birthdays, weddings, family gatherings, he never missed a chance to remind people, "Emily wouldn't be where she is without me," he'd announce casually. Holding a glass of tea like a trophy, I would sit there, cheeks burning, forcing a polite smile while relatives nodded approvingly. Some would even say, "She's so lucky to have an uncle like you." Lucky, that word always pierced me. Because luck didn't feel this heavy, I swallowed my discomfort each time, telling myself it was the price of help. I convinced myself I owed him. Gratitude turned into a quiet chain around my neck, and I wore it silently, thinking maybe one day I would repay him and finally breathe freely. After graduation, he started visiting more often. Not just at family dinners, but at random times, calling me into the living room, sitting with my father like a man with unfinished business. One evening, as I carried tea into the room, I overheard him. "She's done with her degree now," he said, his tone casual but sharp. "She shouldn't waste time sitting at home. She should come work for me. It'll give her discipline." I froze for a second before stepping in, placing the cups carefully on the table. My father nodded weakly, saying, "Yes, we'll see what she wants." But my uncle chuckled, waving his hand. "Wants? She owes it to herself and to me to learn properly. No company will teach her better than family." His words tightened something in my chest. He hadn't looked at me when he said it. He didn't need to. His voice carried ownership, as if my choices weren't mine anymore. Later that night, my mother came into my room quietly. "Your uncle means well," she said, sitting on the edge of my bed. "He just wants to guide you," I sighed. "Guide me or control me?" She looked down at her hands, avoiding my eyes. "We can't deny he helped. He expects something back. That's just how he is." Her words stung. I wanted her to defend me, to tell me my degree was mine alone. Instead, she was reminding me of the debt I couldn't escape. Over the next weeks, my uncle's hints grew stronger. At lunch, he'd asked, "So, Emily, when are you joining us at the office? We could use someone like you." Or he'd say, "Don't waste that brain of yours searching for strangers' jobs when family needs you." I laughed weakly, trying to dodge the questions, but each time his eyes hardened slightly, as if he could see right through me. I couldn't shake the feeling that his help had never been about kindness, it was about control. He hadn't invested in me. He had invested in ownership. One afternoon, he invited me directly to his office. I didn't want to go, but my father insisted. "It's just a visit," he said. "No harm in seeing." The office smelled of paper and dust, the walls covered in old certificates and photos of him shaking hands with local officials. He walked me through the desks, introducing me to employees with a proud grin. "This is my niece," he said. "Fresh graduate, top of her class. She'll be joining us soon." I stared at him, stunned, but stayed silent in front of the staff. My cheeks burned with a mix of embarrassment and anger. When we were finally alone, I gathered courage. "Uncle," I said slowly, "I appreciate everything you've done, but I want to find a paid job on my own." He turned to me, his smile fading just slightly. "Paid? Emily, you're too young to think about money first. You need discipline, training. Working here will teach you real values." I swallowed hard. But I worked hard for my degree. I want to be independent. His eyes darkened. He leaned closer, lowering his voice. Independent? Don't forget you wouldn't have that degree if it weren't for me. Do you think your parents could have managed all those fees without my help? The words cut deep, sharper than I expected. I clenched my fists, forcing back tears. That night I lay awake again, the ceiling my only witness. I thought about how much power one person could hold over another, simply by giving and then never letting me forget it. I realized then that gratitude had turned into a prison, and my uncle held the keys. The weight of my degree felt heavier than ever. It wasn't just paper. It was a contract I had never signed but was being forced to honor. I didn't know then how far he would go, but I could sense that the storm was only beginning to rise. The more I tried to avoid my uncle's hints, the more insistent they became. At first, it was subtle questions during meals or family gatherings. But soon his tone shifted. It wasn't just suggestion anymore, it was expectation. One Sunday afternoon, my parents and I visited his house for lunch. I remember sitting at the dining table, the smell of roasted meat filling the air, everyone laughing and chatting. And then, just as easily as one might comment on the weather, he turned the conversation toward me. So, Emily, he said, leaning back in his chair, you'll start with us at the office next month. Full time, we'll make sure you learn discipline the right way. I froze, fork halfway to my mouth. My parents exchanged quick glances, but neither of them spoke. I cleared my throat. Uncle, I appreciate the offer, but he raised a hand, cutting me off with a smile that wasn't really a smile. No need to thank me, child. This is family loyalty. You'll be doing real work, and trust me, it's better than wasting time chasing empty jobs. My mother tried to lighten the air. She's still looking at her options, but he chuckled, his voice loud and certain. Options? She has the best option right here. I didn't help her through university so she could run around for strangers. She belongs with us. The word belong stuck in my chest like a stone. That night, I replayed his words again and again. He wasn't just offering anymore, he was demanding. And beneath his polished words was the unspoken truth. The job would be unpaid. He had never mentioned a salary. In his mind, my work for him would be repayment enough. I imagined my days chained to his office, my talent wasted, my independence slipping away. I saw myself reduced to the niece who works for free, always under his command, never allowed to grow on my own. Still, a part of me hesitated. Gratitude can be a powerful weapon against freedom. I thought of those semesters when his money had kept me in school, the way my parents had looked relieved when he stepped in. How could I now stand up and say no? The pressure grew heavier the following week. He called me directly, his voice booming through the phone. Emily, I expect you at the office Monday morning. Dress properly, be ready to work. I've told everyone you're joining, I stammered. Uncle, I need time to think. He laughed softly, almost pityingly. Think? What's there to think about? I'm giving you an opportunity no one else would. Do you know how many young graduates sit at home unemployed? You should be thanking me every single day. I bit my lip until it nearly bled, holding back my frustration. But Uncle, I was hoping for a paid job. I need to stand on my own feet. The pause on the other end was chilling. Then his voice dropped. Stand on your own feet? Emily, you wouldn't even be standing at all if it weren't for me. You wouldn't have graduated without my support. Don't forget that. His words left me shaking. I hung up, staring at the phone in my hand, feeling as if he had just chained me with invisible ropes. That evening, I tried talking to my parents. My father sat quietly, as if wishing the problem would disappear on its own. My mother sighed, pressing her fingers against her temples. He means well, she murmured. Maybe just work there for some time. Show him respect. Later, you can look for other things, I snapped, the frustration spilling out. Respect? Does respect mean I give up my future? Work for free just because he throws his help in our faces every chance he gets? My father finally spoke, his voice weary. Emily, sometimes family obligations are heavier than what we want. It's not forever, but to me it already felt like forever. I lay awake that night, torn between duty and desire. The thought of independence glimmered like a fragile flame in my chest. I wanted to carve my own path, even if it meant starting small, even if it meant struggling. I couldn't bear the thought of being owned. Days passed, and his calls became more commanding. Come to the office. Don't delay. This is your responsibility. Each time I tried to protest, he wrapped his manipulation in the language of care. Emily, you'll thank me later. You'll see I only want what's best for you. But I could see through it now. It wasn't care, it was control. His generosity had been a transaction, and now he wanted full payment. One afternoon, Fiavia's generosity had been a transaction, and now he wanted full payment. Sitting by my window with the sun setting in streaks of orange and red, I whispered to myself, I can't do this. I won't do this. The words trembled at first, but then they grew stronger. I knew then that the choice was inevitable. I would have to refuse him, but I also knew men like my uncle didn't take refusal lightly. And soon, I would learn exactly how far he was willing to go. The day I finally said no to my uncle, I felt like my heart was beating outside my chest. For weeks, he had been telling me again and again to join his office. Every time I tried to stay quiet, he pushed harder. But that evening, I decided I couldn't carry it anymore. We were sitting in his living room. My parents were there too. He started speaking in that same tone, half smiling but sharp. Emily, I've already told everyone you'll be starting next week. Don't worry about pay for now. Focus on learning. Family comes first. I looked at his face, then at my parents. My father avoided my eyes, and my mother pressed her lips together nervously. I took a deep breath. Uncle, I said slowly, my voice shaking, I respect everything you've done for me. But I can't work without pay. I want a job where I can stand on my own feet. The smile on his face disappeared in an instant. His eyes narrowed and the room grew quiet. What did you say? He asked, his voice low. I said no, I whispered, though my chest was pounding. I need to make my own way. For a moment he just stared at me. Then his voice grew louder. So this is what it comes to? After all I did for you? You wouldn't have a degree without me, Emily, and now you refuse me like this? My mother tried to calm him. Bye, please, she didn't mean, but he cut her off. Don't defend her. She's ungrateful. She thinks she's above her family now. I wanted to cry, but I forced myself to stay. Inside, I felt like a child again, being scolded. Yet another part of me whispered, stay strong. This is your choice. Don't break now. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing his voice calling me ungrateful. The words scratched at me like sandpaper. Was I really ungrateful? Or was I finally trying to live my life? The answer didn't matter to him. Within days, I started to feel the shift. At a cousin's birthday party, one of my relatives made a comment. I heard you refused your uncle's offer. Bold move. The way he said bold didn't sound like praise. Others whispered in corners, glancing at me. When I walked into the room, conversation stopped. I felt eyes on me everywhere. Later, one of my cousins leaned close and muttered, people are saying you've forgotten where you came from. That you don't value family. I froze. Who said that? He shrugged. You know how it spreads, but I didn't need to guess. I knew exactly whose voice was behind it. My uncle was poisoning the air around me, drop by drop. At another gathering. My aunt patted my shoulder and said loudly, it's sad when children forget sacrifices made for them. But God sees everything. I wanted to disappear. My cheeks burned. I couldn't even defend myself because doing so would make me look worse. At home, things weren't much better. My father kept silent as if speaking might ignite another war. My mother, though softer, carried the same worry. You shouldn't have spoken so directly, she whispered one night. You could have managed it differently. I turned to her, hurt. So I should have let him own me forever? She sighed, saying nothing more. Her silence felt like betrayal, too. Every day became a test. I would open my phone and see relatives' messages, half kind, half judging. Some didn't reply to me at all. A cousin who used to share jokes with me suddenly stopped. Another posted something on social media about children who forget who raised them. I knew it was about me. I cried often in my room, pressing my face into the pillow so no one could hear. But even through the tears, a small flame of stubbornness stayed alive. I told myself, if I give in now, I'll lose myself completely. But still, the loneliness was real. There were days I doubted everything. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe I was selfish. Maybe independence wasn't worth the cost of being cut off from everyone I had grown up with. One evening, I overheard my uncle's voice on the phone with my father. His words were sharp, almost mocking. She doesn't respect me. I won't forget this. Let her see what life is like without family support. I stood by the doorway, trembling. His revenge wasn't just words, it was isolation, turning everyone against me until I broke down and came crawling back. But I refused to crawl. Still, I was scared. How long could I survive the whispers? How long before I lost every relationship I had? I didn't know then that hope would arrive in a form I didn't expect, a voice of support, quiet but strong enough to remind me I wasn't alone. My uncle's control wasn't as uncheckable as he wanted everyone to believe. His shadow wasn't endless. For the first time, I believed that maybe, just maybe, I could rise from this. The path ahead was still uncertain, but I wasn't afraid anymore. Because I had my own voice now. And one voice of support beside me was enough to remind me of my strength. I closed my notebook one evening and whispered to myself, "This is not the end. This is the beginning." And deep down, I knew the next chapter of my life was waiting, one where I would no longer be defined by fear, but by courage. Finding my first real job didn't happen overnight. It was a slow, sometimes painful process of rejection after rejection. I sent out applications, sat for interviews, and faced polite rejections that stung more than I liked to admit. Each time I got an email that began with, "We regret to inform you," my heart sank a little, but I kept going. Because now I had something stronger than before. I had my aunt's words in my head, reminding me not to give up, not to hand my life over to the chains of family loyalty that weren't loyalty at all. Then one morning I received a call. It was from a small publishing company downtown. The woman on the line said, "Emily, we'd like to offer you the position of junior assistant. It's not a big salary, but it's a start. Can you join next week?" I almost dropped the phone. My voice shook as I replied, yes, I can." When I hung up, I sat on the edge of my bed, my hands covering my face, tears spilling out. Not tears of shame this time, not tears of isolation, but tears of relief. This job wasn't glamorous. It wasn't high-paying. But it was mine. It belonged to me, not to my uncle, not to his influence, not to anyone else. On my first day, I woke up early, dressed in the simplest professional clothes I had, and took the bus into the city. The office was small but warm, with shelves lined with books and the smell of fresh coffee in the air. The work was simple: answering emails, filing manuscripts, taking notes. But every task I did felt like a brick laid on the road of my independence. For the first time, I earned money with my own name on it. When I got my first paycheck, I held it in my hands for a long time, staring at the numbers. It wasn't much, but it was freedom written on paper. I whispered to myself, "This is yours, Emily, you did this." At home, my parents said little. My mother glanced at the check once and gave a small, tired smile. My father nodded, as if he didn't know what else to say. They didn't openly celebrate, but they didn't criticize either. That was enough for me. But my uncle, he didn't stay silent. At the next family gathering, the whispers started again. I could feel eyes on me when I entered the room. One cousin muttered under her breath, "She thinks she's so independent now." Another relative shook his head and said loudly enough for me to hear, "Such disrespect. Her uncle made her who she is, and this is how she repays him." My uncle sat at the center of the table like a king on his throne. He didn't look at me directly, but I knew the words floating around the room came from him. The poison was still spreading, but something was different this time. I sat tall, ate quietly, and smiled politely. The whispers no longer pierced me the way they once did. They floated around me like smoke, but I refused to breathe them in. I realized they only had power when I believed them. And I didn't believe them anymore. At one point, an aunt asked me directly, "Emily, how's your little job going? Enough to buy yourself some luxuries yet?" Her tone dripped with sarcasm. I looked at her calmly and replied, "It's not about luxuries. It's about building my life step by step. And I'm proud of it." Her smile faltered. The room grew quiet for a moment, and I knew I had spoken with a strength they couldn't take from me. Later that evening, my uncle finally spoke, his voice calm but sharp. "Emily, remember, without me, you wouldn't have finished your degree. Don't forget who made you." I looked at him, my heart steady. For the first time, I wasn't afraid. I said softly, "I'll always remember who helped me, but I'll also remember who tried to own me because of it." And I chose not to live that way. The room went silent. My uncle's face tightened, but he didn't reply. In that silence, I felt something powerful. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was standing. That night when I went home, I stood by my window again, just like in those lonely nights before. But this time, the city lights looked different. They no longer reminded me of the distance between me and the world. They reminded me of possibilities waiting ahead. Freedom had cost me a lot. It had cost me the easy approval of my family, the warmth of cousins who once called me sister, the comfort of being seen as good in their eyes. But in return, freedom gave me something far greater. It gave me dignity. It gave me peace. I realized something important. Family love that demands silence is not love. Generosity that demands control is not generosity. Respect that is only given when you obey is not respect. I had walked through the fire of judgment, and I was still standing. The road ahead would not be easy. I knew there would be more whispers, more tests, more moments of doubt. But I wasn't the same girl who cried into her pillow every night. I was stronger now because I had chosen my own road. As I prepared for bed that night, I closed my eyes and whispered to myself, "You're free, Emily, and no one can take that away anymore." And for the first time, I truly believed it. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe to the channel, like it, spread the word, and tell us where you're watching from.